Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Lumar webinar on how to report on any data from your site. Just before we get started, I just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware that we do have closed captioning available for this webinar. So you should have the closed captions icon at the bottom of the screen. If that doesn't appear, you might need to click on the more icon, which is the three dots. From there, you'll be able to choose to either show the subtitles, view the live transcript, but we're also recording this webinar, so we will send a recording in the next few days, which will also have subtitles included. I'm afraid there won't be popcorn available, Dave, at the moment, but that's something for us to consider. Maybe we can think about Lumar popcorn that we can send out ahead of a webinar. But yes, so my name's Andrew Levy. I head up product marketing here at Lumar, and I'm joined today by our CEO, Panos, and our Director of Professional Services, Richard, who are both going to deliver the content for us today. In terms of our agenda, I'm just going to cover off a few housekeeping points, and then we'll get into the main event, where Panos is going to talk through what is website health, and also talk about Lumar's approach to going beyond out-of-the-box analysis and looking at the kind of unique parts of your site and what information you can glean from there. Panos is also going to touch on a few examples of things that we've done for Lumar customers. And then Richard's also going to dive into a little deeper into some of those things that we've been able to do with Lumar's approach. So as I said, just a couple of housekeeping points. We should have some time for a bit of Q&A at the end. So please do submit those questions using the Q&A box that you should have at the bottom of your screen. That just helps us keep everything in one place, make sure we don't miss anything. And if we don't manage to get to your question, then please be rest assured that we will follow up with you after the webinar. Once the webinar finishes, there is also a short survey at the end of the webinar. It'll take less than a minute to complete. Please do fill that in because all of your feedback really helps us define our future webinar program and also make improvements to these sessions. And finally, as I mentioned, we will be recording the webinar, so we'll share that recording with you in the next few days, so you can review it at a later date or share with your colleagues who maybe couldn't attend today. And as I've mentioned, that recording will have subtitles available as well. So just before we get started and I hand over to Panos, we just wanted to have a quick poll, which is basically just to get a sense of the audience we've got today and also get an idea of what type of data you're currently analyzing. So it should pop up on your screen any second. There you go. And yeah, really sort of question is just which metrics are you currently analyzing on your site? Just select the option that best suits. We'll give it a few seconds and then we'll get the results. So really looking kind of what are the main metrics that you're analyzing. Appreciate that's this is a single choice one. So maybe the main metrics that you're collecting, be that technical SEO, accessibility, site speed, UX, cookie compliance, security, or browser errors. So yeah, do fill that in, and then we'll get the results up in a second. Okay. So probably unsurprisingly, most of the audience, 73% looking at technical SEO, a few on accessibility, a few more on site speed, and a few on UX there as well. So thank you for that. It just gives us an idea of how we can of what type of metrics you're looking at within your work at this time as well. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Panos, who's going to take you through the first part of the content. Over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. So, as a starting point, SEO in our view has always been more than a discipline about discoverability. For Lumar, it's intrinsically interconnected to a website's health. And so the starting point for recognizing the need to give customers a solution to easily analyze any website data really begins with how we look at and define the fundamentals of website health. So here's what we know. In order to be competitive, to be able to convert the traffic that's being driven to your website, to keep visitors on your website, you need to have a strong technical foundation. Your site needs to load quickly. Ultimately, you need to create a positive user experience and a safe and secure website environment. Those are the key elements to generating great experiences for customers, whether they be old and new. But there's a really obvious statement, which is that the only way to create long-lasting, profitable experiences is through ultimately optimizing your web experience. In fact, in today's world, there's really no other way. Now, that optimization requires a few core things. So your website needs to be discoverable. Given that most of the responsiveness on that poll is focused on SEO, it's probably clear that having the right and consistent SEO strategy is key to getting qualified traffic to your site. From a speed perspective, identifying and fixing and monitoring and preventing elements that slow down your web page is a necessity of web operations, not to mention core web vitals. A UX with engaging and inclusive and accessible content for everyone, ultimately, when websites do those things, they improve conversions. And those conversions could be traffic conversions, incremental page views, more articles read, more purchases, lead forms being completed. But essentially, that's the foundation. And what we know is that when websites perform better across these three areas than the benchmarks in their industries, oftentimes we see conversion rates that are 20% higher than their peers in that industry. But there's a catch, right? So even if you invest your resources in being more discoverable and fast and engaging, which by the way, you should, there's still a large opportunity to be able to maximize website performance. And that's ultimately through leveraging the unique data on your web page, along with all the aforementioned metrics. Websites that look at standard insights and metrics and also unique data sets for optimization, those are the ones that ultimately perform best. And so, for us, the question has become, how do you identify the website data that's most impactful for your website performance and ultimately make it actionable just as you would SEO, accessibility, and site speed? And so we created custom analytics to help publishers, to help retailers, banks, B2B organizations, frankly, anyone who owns and relies on their website for business to answer that equation, answer that question. And so let's start talking about how it works. So a little bit of history here. About 2.5 years ago, we re-architected our crawler to extend its capabilities beyond SEO to support our customers who needed to incorporate more data into and beyond SEO within our platform from a single source. This capability gives Lumar customers the opportunity to access SEO and non-SEO data such as site speed and accessibility. But it also gives them the opportunity to capture any data from the HTML of the page and create custom analysis and insights for actioning. That could be not only GA and GSC and log data, but literally any type of data source externally or from your web page. Now, there are 3 broad categories for custom analytics. So let's start with static analytics. The idea here is that, as I just mentioned, you can take any HTML from the page at scale for custom insights. This is something that could be as simple as checking web pages for required text or information missing and highlighting when it's missing at broad scale. Dynamic analytics, so this is the opportunity to be able to replicate certain behaviors on your website to understand and to optimize user interactions. Thinking about tracking copy changes at scale, you can easily allow, we easily allow our customers to be able to identify changes in text or module content and then compare that with traffic data to understand how successful those changes can be. With advanced analytics, we take it even further. So this is where we integrate and compare external data sources, such as how we've used external data sources for site speed and accessibility. And whether that's using large language models, AI, external libraries, all those could lead to different types of opportunities, such as the ability to identify the most appropriate redirect targets for a URL. Websites are incredibly dynamic and constantly require new insights to drive improvement. And so these categories really help to cover the types of analysis that we believe ultimately drive the most impact. So the starting point is our crawler. Every Lumar customer can easily access website health data. You configure your crawl settings, you set up projects, and from our interface and APIs, you have access to SEO, site speed, and accessibility off the shelf. But in tandem, and additionally, our crawler is able to incorporate organizational logic or insights into operational questions. Now, obviously, there are a couple examples here, but those could be questions like which pages led to no results when a customer user searches. All of these data sets, whether they be off the shelf like SEO and accessibility and site speed, or some of the organizational data that's important to you, they feed into our reporting and operational workflow to be able to provide actionable insights centralized within our platform and portable to any data repository. And so to bring this to life a little bit, I'm going to go through a few high-level examples across different industries to be able to make this more tangible. So let's start with price comparison. If you're a retailer, understanding your competitors' products and pricing is incredibly important. But automating the identification and the ingestion of data is challenging, especially when we're talking about it at scale. So what we do is we can easily compare data from different websites to understand how your inventory is priced relative to your competitors, which ultimately enables our customers to use this data for things like pricing strategy, optimization, and sales and promotions.
Yeah, and a key thing here to note is that you can start to make decisions on this during the crawl. You're not having to wait for the crawl to complete, get all those, especially if you're a big e-retailer, you're getting 1 million pages back. Maybe that's taken a week or something. Well, now you can make the decision during the crawl. You can start to have that sort of thought process, that thinking done whilst the crawl is ongoing. Maybe even export and ping out, say, well, our competitors just started a sale. Should we react? Well, you can have that information at your grasp now instead of having to pull the spreadsheets, copy it all out, or maybe just go and pull that information manually.
Now, there's a lot of time spent on content creation and curation. And what we know is that normally whoever gets Google to index first wins. And so the example here is let's arm our content creators with the visibility to understand how long it takes Google to access your new content. Because ultimately, if you can decrease the time it takes, you'll have a much higher likelihood of being indexed first.
And of course, with any sort of publisher, you are wanting to get there first because that means you're most likely to get the top ranking, the most traffic, hitting it whilst it's the hottest news item on there. And there's multiple things we can look at here. We can look at why did Google not index, or rather, why did Google and when did Google choose to index your page? And we can output that back out. Then we can blend that with other data sources. How much traffic did you actually get? Was that valuable? When did the traffic spike stop? And maybe even for more evergreen stuff, when did the traffic drop off? So how many days does it take before the traffic starts to slide back down till we then have an idea of how long is this traffic actually, or how long is this article going to be valuable to us?
And lastly here, keyword optimization. So at this point, every organization has a keyword strategy. What we aim to do here is to create bespoke opportunities to expand keyword optimization using large language models, easily access keyword recommendations, and create dynamic content scores based on their presence in page elements like title or meta description or H1 tags and page text. Ultimately ensuring web pages are primed for success and obviously increasing organic traffic.
Yeah, and then when we come to large language models, the one thing that I think they are exceptional at is taking one data set, one very big data set, and summarizing it. So we've now got, oh, I've got all these pages. What are the keywords? What are the things I'm referencing most often? What is the key topic I've selected for these different pages, whether knowingly or unknowingly? And then what you get from that is, oh, these two pages have the same key topic. Well, we can separate those out now. We can say, oh, let's reduce some of the mention, or maybe we get more specific of the mention on one side and reduce or increase the specificity of the other article, and you reduce keyword cannibalization as a result. I've got a bit more of an in-depth example a little bit later on where we've actually used it as an actual use case. So I'll save some of that for then, but I'll let you move on.
Well, excellent. Thanks, Rich. So, I mean, these are just a few small examples. Obviously, know that there are capabilities that expand to include things like spell check or browser errors and cookie compliance and a lot more. But let me hand it over to Rich to talk through a few of the expansive use cases across custom analytics.
Cheers, Panos. Yeah, I mean, these are things that we've actually already implemented. So this is not, oh, these are great ideas. These are things that people are actually using. Companies are already getting value out of it. And to break down, I've sort of tried to get some different levels of how involved you can be. Obviously, the more complicated one requires a bit more coding and a bit more setup. But this is a more simple one, and there's a simple reason to do this. So all we're trying to do here is capture soft 404s before Google finds them. Now, Google doesn't explicitly say why something might be a 404, with the exception of redirecting to the home page. So that one aside, we've got things like, sorry, there's no stock. Sorry, there's no results. All those sort of indications to Google that there's an error on this page that is not a server error, it's a content error. But the page is not a 404. Now, we know that Google basically takes these, turns them into soft 404s, removes all the signals that you built up, but it treats them as an individual page as a result. If we capture that before that happens, we can redirect that page, maybe save some of those signals, or maybe we realize and we populate that page with content, or we just get rid of it. We make the decision. We take that decision out of Google's hands, put it back into ours. And then you have that control. So in this instance, the overall goal was to capture pages that were going to be dropped from the index and do something with them before they lose that value. Now, this next one's a bit more of a complex example. So effectively, we've moved on from what is going on the page to what happens when someone interacts with the page. What we've got here is an example where someone has a search bar or something similar. They start to type in the result, and then the individual search software, whatever's been installed, tries to finish based on popularity, typically, like how common that search was. But if you're just doing it on popularity, what is actually being suggested? You may not know. Is it the right stuff being prioritized? Now, the client that was interested in this particular one was very keenly aware that sometimes stuff is not appearing in the right order. Products are not appearing with the right suggestions. So we can then capture that. We can start to type using custom analytics. We can actually interact with the page, start to type in that message and capture the results. So we can take the most common search terms, record what was actually being sent back, and say, is this what we want? Is this prioritized in a way that we think it should be? And of course, by improving that, you're going to improve your search conversion rate. You're going to make it easier for users to complete the action that they wanted to take on your website. So touching on the keyword issue, well, not so much an issue, the keyword example. So what we did was very simple, had the LLM capture large amounts of the article, sort of ignore the navigation bars and your typical boilerplate stuff, and say, what is this page about? Compare that to the keywords that we already know it ranks for, and have essentially two lists there of, this is what you rank for, this is what we think the page is about. Great, we've got those two data points. Now let's compare it to the other pages. Let's start to say, well, where else is keywords being cannibalized? And where else could we be more specific? Or maybe we could rank for something, or we should rank for something, but for some reason that's not happening. So you end up with these data sets. You end up with keywords that we are ranking for, keywords that we could rank for, keywords that we're ranking with two different pages that we're overlapping, or keyword cannibalization to shorten it. And by integrating AI, we've pulled in a whole other software program into our tool there. So you're now using two separate software programs within a single interface and getting the output at the end in a single usable place. So, if you don't want to write your own AI, then when that's fair enough, I don't want to do that. Then yeah, lean on this technology to get those results out. And finally, this is a really interesting use case. So this is very much heading into compliance, I guess, almost, or in fact, it touches on all sort of areas in terms of error management. So what we're doing here is capturing the errors that the browser's spitting out. So the browser's saying undefined or something like that. It's trying to execute the JavaScript. Something hasn't worked as it should do. And what happens to the page after that? Well, we don't necessarily know, because up until now we've been crawling and here's the HTML, but what does it look like? What was the error? Why was it showing in this instance? And that's what we can get now. We can capture the full console, provide a list essentially of what errors happened, maybe even the full stack trace if that's useful. Sometimes it's not, but you can capture those sort of things that are going on. We can say, well, your CDM failed and you got a 404, so your image didn't load in this instance. Not necessarily something that's very easy to get. So at the end of it all, you've not just got, oh, here is a handful of errors that happened. Here is a full list of the things that we found as we went through your entire site. Prioritize the ones that happen most often. So that's how you've ended up with an action at the end of it of fix these rendering issues. This is where they're happening.
Thanks, Rich. So, in summary, we've gone through several high-level and specific examples from Rich of ways in which custom analytics can address website pain points. It's not limited to what we've discussed on this call. To provide a couple additional examples, for e-commerce, it could be checking product stock availability. For publishing, it's content analysis. As Rich mentioned, there's compliance and CDN errors, and really there's so much more. One thing that we want to emphasize with custom analytics is there's a test ground to be able to understand and explore more through the capabilities that we have. And really, what we want to leave you with today is that there's a better and easier way to be able to access bespoke data that you need. And ultimately, in doing so, you're able to increase performance, responsiveness, and your competition, which significantly impacts and ultimately maximizes website health.
Great. Thank you, Panos and Richard, for that content. As Panos mentioned, the idea of this was to give you some examples of some of the things that we can do with this new technology. The opportunities can almost be pretty much endless. So we wanted to give you a flavor of some of the things that we can do, and maybe start to get you to think about some of the things that you might want to do within your website, and some of the data that you've not been able to access before, and see whether that's something that we're able to do. So we'd love to continue this conversation with you. We'd love to have an opportunity to sort of talk to you about what website optimization data you may be missing and whether we can help with that. We want to make that as easy as possible for you. So if you are thinking about that right now, there's a poll question that's going to pop up on your screen. You should just be able to respond to that, just to let us know if you want to have a chat. We'll reach out and book in some time with one of our teams so that we can talk through what you need, what you're looking to do, and obviously we can then start to see whether Lumar's able to help you with that. So the poll should be up on your screen. If you do want to have a quick chat about some of the stuff that you might want to do, obviously just choose yes. You can also say maybe later, maybe now is not the particularly right time to do that, but you still want us to reach out to you in the future. Or if you're not worried at this time, then obviously you've got an option there as well. So we'll just give that a couple of seconds to allow people to fill that in. And then we'll get on to some of the questions that we've had in. Only had a couple of questions come in so far, but if you do have any questions, again, please do add them to that Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we'll be happy to answer them for you on this call, because we've got a few minutes left. Or obviously, if you've got things that you want to talk to us about afterwards, then you can get in touch with us through various means for us as well. So the first question come in, Richard, I'll maybe pin this one over to you. How is this different from custom extractions?
Yeah, no problem whatsoever. This is a really good question. It's effectively at the moment you think of an extraction of a data, take something off the page. You can do that. That's pretty basic. But the difference really comes into you can start to make decisions on the data. So I extract something and I say, well, how many results am I getting for a search result? I'm getting, I don't know, 100 products. Great, is that right? should we be getting 100? Well, we can start to go, well, we expected 100. So now we can say, yes, that's correct. Or we expected 99. We go, oh, hold on, that's not correct. So instead of exporting all this data and basically having spreadsheets and doing comparisons and essentially manually correcting individual things like this, you can set up these decision processes and effectively push it more towards an automated thing on your side of, I expect this. What am I getting? And how can I action that sort of thing at the end of it? So yes, no, this is broken, this is not broken, and that sort of thing. And you can expand that. So search results is an easy one to sort of think of. It's like how many results do we get? But you can expand it to really more impactful things. Like, is the button there? You know, can I click add to cart? You could actually start to automate some sort of testing structure off the back of this, which is it's quite powerful. It depends on how much you can sort of focus and think on your whole conversion path. But if you can sort of isolate all those individual bits, you can use this tool to actually do that.
Great. Thank you, Richard. Probably going to ping this one over to you as well because it's more on the technical side. How many data sources can you combine?
Oh, a lot. Yeah, I think I'm not sure what our maximum execution time would be on this sort of stuff, but I mean, I can give you an example of like we can go and fetch from Google Search Console. We can go and fetch from analytics. We can fetch somebody else's website who doesn't even have an API. That will take a bit longer, but it's that ability to just go and make these requests. You know, we're not sat there waiting for, let's say, JavaScript to finish and like have a timeout and stuff like that. We can have this little container that can kind of act as its own mini crawler. You are limited to not as many URLs as our full crawler because that would be weird having a million crawl within a million or something like that. But you can just go and fetch this data from other places, get it back, and then make the decisions on it. It's not restricted to one or two data sources. You know, you can start to think bigger if there's something that you wanted to combine. Let's say all your competitor prices. You know, we showed the example of, oh, this is my competitor, this is my website. But what about all your competitors? Let's go and get all the prices and see whose is best. So yeah, you can combine a lot of data sources basically.
Good, thank you very much. And somebody else has also asked about how other data source integrations work with custom analytics.
Oh, the simplest way of putting it is it can make a request, like a web request. So you can kind of go, oh, I know the API is at this location. I will fill out the request based on the data pieces that I want and go make it. Or we can run it more as like it's the best way of putting it, like a fetch and render sort of thing. So you can go and do a fetch and render on that website, but then have the limitations of, oh, grab this bit of data that I actually want, not necessarily the whole website. Please don't just start pulling in everybody else's website. That would get very large very quickly. But it's that sort of open-ended thing where if there is an API, you can make the request and deal with the response like you would in any normal sort of programming language. I might get this wrong, but I think it's TypeScript that we use to actually do this. So it's essentially limited by the functionality of TypeScript. Unless I've got that wrong, in which case I might be getting skewered by the devs very shortly.
Well, we'll try and keep them off you on that one for that. Had a few anonymous questions so far, but got one from David who is asking, does it run basically on the crawl data or does it run inline during the crawl?
It runs, so it can do both, I believe. It runs in, I'm going to possibly butcher this. It runs in a container, so it can take the crawl data and it can go and do stuff on the crawl data, but then it also can make extra requests. So to give an example, Dave, it's if you were on one page and you wanted to have a look at a second page, you could run the second page within the container and pull that data back into the initial page, if that makes sense. It's essentially a container that can do multiple things. It can crawl other pages effectively.
Great. And looks like this might be the last one, another anonymous person. But again, if anyone else has any other questions, please do pop them in. So this one is, after a website server migration, my website's impression dropped by 30%. By this tool, how can I find the transplant shock that happened during the migration or errors that happened? Is it possible to find actionable steps from this tool?
Potentially, yeah. Sorry, I've immediately jumped in. I didn't know if you wanted to add anything else into that, but yeah, potentially you could do. Obviously, we wouldn't necessarily know what the cause was to say what the impressions are, but effectively what your basic sort of thing you'd be looking at is you've wanted to have crawled the website beforehand and got as much data as you could from GSC or whatever data source that you're using to track your impressions. Then you want to crawl afterwards and find those gaps and what changed on those pages. That's what we're kind of looking for. Typically, the default thing we'll be looking for with a server migration is any website URL changes, that sort of thing. Anything that would have resulted in Google putting the traffic against a new unique identifier, a new page, effectively. That's usually where the traffic goes down. And maybe someone's forgotten to redirect. Maybe Google thinks the page is a 404 because it gets a blank page or something like that when it shouldn't do. This is usually the first things I would be checking. Now, if you've got a broad 30% across the board loss, that might be more down to Google updating its understanding of your website. You may have changed the intent of your website by shifting it, or it might just recrawled and then changed its mind as a result of that. That isn't as uncommon as you think it is, where when you do a migration, you essentially trigger Google to go crawl my whole website again, tell me what you think about my website afterwards. So it is something that can happen that isn't really actionable, unfortunately. But I would start with the stuff that you can action, because anything you can take action on, potentially you can improve. So that would be where I would start. Check my redirects, check my 404s or potential 404s, soft 404s, that sort of stuff that might be impacting pages that previously had traffic and now, pardon me, and now have lost traffic. Now, obviously, if you're asking this question, you may not have Lumar yet. So the way that I would do this is crawl, assuming you buy Lumar, which you should do immediately, crawl the site with recent data in Search Console. Let's say go back, I don't know, a week or maybe 30 days. I'm not sure exactly when this happened, but maybe go back like 30 days. Then go back 90 days and remove the 30-day traffic from the 90-day traffic, and that will help you build up the picture that you didn't have from crawling before.
Great. Looks like that's all the questions that we've had in right now. So just to wrap up, we've got a few things that might be useful for you in the as a follow-up from this. We basically have a web page that we've set up for custom analytics, and we're basically updating that page with more and more sort of use cases as and when we're developing them for customers. So there might be some more inspiration that you can get there for things that you might want to have a look at on your own site. Our blog is available, so there's a whole host of content available there. Probably sure there's some information there on site migrations as well, so you might be able to get some more information there from the site migration point of view. So do check that out. And then our next webinar is actually going to be on the 25th of September, and that is Web Optimization Simplified. So you'll be, if you've had this one, you'll probably get an email very shortly in regard to that. So we can invite you along, and you can come and check that one out as well. We also do have recordings of the previous webinars on our website as well. So if you go there, you can check out some of the previous sessions that we've run as well. As I said, this session is being recorded, so we'll update it in the next few days so that we can put that onto the website with a little recap and the subtitles, as I mentioned before. So do check that out. We'll send you a quick email when that's ready so that you've got all the details available there as well. So main thing now for me to do is just to thank Panos and Richard for taking us through all that content today. And of course, a big thank you to all of you for joining us. Please do have a great rest of the week, and we'll look forward to seeing you on another webinar very soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.